Hello and welcome to the May 22nd edition of the Bubb Report. Last week, in the mad scramble to get registered to vote in the 24-hour window following the issuing of the writ, political parties continued their jockeying for support, both from partisan and non-partisan voters. The NNP and the NDC held dueling public events in different parts of the country. In the case of the National Democratic Congress, their leader held a town hall meeting in the constituency of St. David. Notably absent from this meeting was his deputy political leader, while the NNP held a major rally in the constituency of St. George Northwest, the home constituency of the Prime Minister. Also, several third-party candidates have declared their intentions to compete in the upcoming elections. This week on the report, we feature 3 of these third-party candidates and discuss their plans and programs for this election cycle. Also on our program, we discuss the current state of the reparation struggle for Grenada and formerly colonized Caribbean countries in the wake of recent high-profile visits by the royal family as the white unelected head of state of Grenada and other OECS territories celebrates her Platinum Jubilee. During every stop on their recent whirlwind tours, activists in Jamaica, Belize, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines protested their presence and called for the United Kingdom to apologize and pay reparations for hundreds of years of slavery. This week on our program, we sit down with Ambassador Ollie Gill to discuss Grenada's reparations work against the backdrop of a decision by Prince Edward to cancel the Grenada leg of his trip. We welcome our guests, Earl Maitland of the Grenada Empowerment Movement, third-party candidates Dennis and George, Ollie Gill, the chairman of Grenada's Reparations Committee, and Andrea Rapier of the newly constituted Power Party in Grenada. We thank you for joining us. A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to yet another edition of the Bubb Report. Now, last week, the report sent 2 detailed proposals to both major political parties by share of vote concentration in Grenada to participate in a national debate. This is not the first time in Grenadian history that a call was made for a national debate by civil society, of which the Fourth Estate, the media, is a part. We subsequently issued a press statement that was posted to our social media platforms. Now, judging by some of the vacuous and woefully ill-informed comments by some who claim to be educators and civil servants in their Facebook profiles, you would get the impression that the Bubb Report was run by a bunch of amateurs who lack creative originality or depth of thought when it comes to the business of producing journalistic content or developing full-throated programming proposals. It would appear as if this Sunday program, to some of you, is a saltfish shop operation. So let's examine some of these comments. One user dismissed the call as one of trying to follow America. Another faceless troll berated and insulted veteran journalist Lou Smith in the process, chiding Lou as a failed journalist and political party hack who, if allowed to host a debate, would use it as a platform to favor one candidate over the next. In fact, Lou Smith played no role in penning this proposal. But I digress. So to the social media experts and faceless trolls who have expressed disgust at the call for us to have a public debate, here are the facts. However, I'm not sure correcting one's ignorance would make a difference in this age of misinformation and disinformation. Firstly, it was the late Judy Williams in 1999 who called for there to be a national debate between the political parties in Grenada. Working in tandem with the grouping of Grenada civil society organizations, Williams felt that debates were an essential avenue for lifting the bar concerning the quality of campaigning in the state. Further, Sister Judy Williams and the grouping of civil society organizations in 1999 proposed the following quote, to facilitate citizens' engagement with the candidates through community fora, where candidates would present themselves and the proposed policies and programs that were to be interrogated by citizens and electors. Unquote. The resulting proposals can all be found in the Code of Political Conduct document that was meant to guide election campaign conduct of the January 1999 elections and beyond. Further, televised debates are not only an American phenomenon, as some of you have suggested. Many Western democracies, including Caribbean jurisdictions such as Jamaica, the Bahamas, and Trinidad and Tobago, have successfully organized live televised debates for local government and national elections between their major parties. In the United Kingdom, they considered it unusual that political parties in countries that claim to be vibrant democracies do not have debates. Further, debates are often the only time during a campaign when candidates are together at the same time in the same place. This allows independent and undecided voters to make side by side comparisons and offers candidates a chance to say why they are best suited for elected office. In divided election environments or countries emerging from conflict, debates give political rivals a chance to show that despite their differences, they can treat each other with mutual respect while they disagree on the issues. Debates are therefore increasingly seen as benchmarks of healthy democracies. Citizens also view debates as an indication of open, transparent election processes where all candidates can compete equally. We therefore stand by our decision to propose a national debate on the issues so that the undecided and independent voters who are deliberate about their voting decisions would have the opportunity to assess the candidates that are vying to serve the people. And at this time, I wish to welcome my first guest for this morning. He is Ambassador Ali Gill, who is also the chairperson of Grenadas Reparations Committee. Ambassador Gill, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bob, for having me in your program once again, especially now when the topic of the day is election and politics. And we are talking reparations this morning. So I'm grateful to be
Absolutely,
here.
and we still have to make sure that the reparations conversation continues in spite of the electioneering that is currently happening.
Well, definitely, the struggle for reparations started before any election, continues during, and it will be after election. So it is always a timely occasion to have that discussion.
Absolutely. Now, Ambassador Gill, the last quarter of 2022 really put into stark focus the cause of reparations for Grenada and formerly colonized countries in the Caribbean. Can you summarize what the Reparations Committee has been up to over the last 4 months, especially against the backdrop of several high profile visits by members of the royal family to the region? Of course, as we know, they canceled the Grenada leg of the trip, but talk to us about that work over the last 4 months.
We have been busy for the last 4 months or thereabouts, and I believe our work and the awareness of the reparative justice struggle has been highlighted by the fact that the Prince and Earl of Wessex decided to cancel their trip to Grenada. What we have embarked upon is an education program to create greater awareness among the Grenadian population with regards to the issue of reparations and to bring the facts to the people. And the cancelled visit by the royals gave us an opportunity to do so many different interviews, not just in Grenada, but across the Caribbean and in the UK. You know, my person like myself, Dr. Nicole Dow, Angus Martin, yourself, and so on. have been through the region and international press doing interviews and so on to create that awareness again with regards to the issue of reparative justice. Beyond that, this Thursday, the 26th, we are going to be having our second annual reparations roundtable discussion. Last year we did it a lecture. This year we are having a panel discussion with regards to Grenada confronting its past and the issue of reparations. And we're going to be having, of course, of BBC fame, Laura Trevanillion, will be joining us on that panel discussion along with other Grenadians. It will be chaired by Dr. Damian Greaves. We're going to have persons like Dr. Tesfa Patterson. We're going to have novelist Dunbar Campbell. John Angus Martin is also on the panel. Kizzy Henry Cadet will be on the panel. So that discussion will be held at the Marshall House. It will be part in person and part virtual. So that persons who cannot be there physically, and what we are going to do, we're going to bring in quite a bit of the school children across the island to be in the live audience, and we are going to be beaming as well virtually, so that persons who are not in the physical space can be part of the program. Apart from that, we were fortunate enough, or should I say unfortunate, whichever way you look at it, but Laura Trevanillion, uh, uh, her ancestors had once owned slaves here in Grenada, and she saw it fit to come to Grenada to do a documentary with regards to her confronting her past. So here again, we had an occasion to discuss the issue of reparations, to discuss the issue of the legacy of slavery and the slave trade. And that documentary was aired on radio, television, and print media in the UK and throughout the world. So that Grenada, the work of the reparations committee here in Grenada has gone global within the last month or so. And she will be back to be part of our panel discussion on Grenada and confronting the issue of reparations. So that we have had quite a lot of activities. Also, too, we can't forget that on the 19th of May was Malcolm X's 97th birthday, and we issued a statement with regards to that. And come the 29th of May would have been Morris Bishop's birthday, and we would again try to remind Grenadians that these two Pan-Africanists, Morris Bishop and Malcolm X, were both Grenadians, first generation Grenadians. Of course, Louis Little, Malcolm's mom, was hailed from the community of Ladig in St. Andrews. And as far as we are concerned, we take ownership for giving the world and giving the struggle for Black people in America, our brilliant son, Malcolm X. And of course, the work of Comrade Morris Bishop speaks for itself here in Grenada.
Now, that and I would press you there further on Laura Trevelyan's visit to Grenada, and of course that was against the backdrop also of the discovery of the Bank of England and their slaveholding legacy in the context of Grenada. So, could you talk to us about what we discovered with respect to the Bank of England and how they profited from slavery in Grenada?
That again, Dr. Bubb brings home the point of reparations to Grenadians who otherwise may have been skeptical before learning of that information. Here it is, you have a major financial institution from the United Kingdom, a major financial institution. They had owned 499 slaves or thereabouts here in Grenada and 3 plantations. So what would have transpired is that they benefited directly from the slave trade, from the backs of the enslaved Africans. The profits from these plantations went directly into the Bank of England, where they could have used these resources to make investments, to give loans, and so on and so forth. At the end of their stint, they divested their interests in these Africans and sold the plantations and the slaves. So they profited directly. In other words, if before then you had skepticism with regards to this issue, and now the Bank of England is owned by Her Majesty. Yes? So you're talking about a direct link of slave owning and profiteering here on the island of Grenada that would have financed a major financial institution in the United Kingdom and by extension the Great Britain and the United Kingdom. And you see, listeners have to understand, viewers have to understand, Kellen, that we here in the Caribbean, we in Grenada, we provided the fuel for the industrial revolution of the United Kingdom. And it doesn't stop at the United Kingdom, of course. Holland, France, you know, even the Germans invested heavily in the slave trade and slavery. And these major European powers, they profited and benefited. And I invite persons to get a hold of Sohila Rebecca's book, How Great Britain Underdeveloped Europe. So you can read for yourself how the systematic, and it continued long after the abolition of slavery. It continued when you read of the work of Uriah Butler, when you read of the work of, and the persons older than myself who would have struggled in the 1950s and so on and 60s with Eric Matthew Gary, the Great Britain deliberately for over a century after the abolition of slavery ensured that the economic system in the Caribbean was geared towards exporting our raw materials to the factories in the United Kingdom. More than that, they invested minimally in our infrastructure, in our roads, in our schools, in our health system, and so on, so that it goes beyond just the abolition of slavery. So in the 1950s, 1951, the Gary Revolution, when the older people and so on tell you that Uncle Gary would take them off from under cocoa and banana plantations and so on, that is not accident. But it was much bigger than what they were saying to us, in the sense that what you find in Grenada was that the British devised a colonial system where our forefathers would have worked on agricultural plantations for basic wages, for some cents, basically, where they could have barely afforded to provide meals for the children, where children labor was encouraged by the British. And older persons here in Grenada will say to you, as the firstborn, they would have had to go and work to help to mind the other children and so on. That was not accident. That was the deliberate policy of the British to ensure that they extracted as much wealth from us here in Grenada. And that is why the call for reparations is not fanciful. We are saying to Western powers and so on, there is precedent for reparations. The Germans, after the Holocaust, paid billions of dollars to the Jews. Israel, in fact, is a state that is found on the principle of reparative justice. And what we are asking for through the CARICOM 10-point plan is not just a blank check for cash. We are saying that we deserve an apology. In other words, the genocide of our indigenous populations, the Caribs, the Arawaks, and so the slave trade, where more than around 50% of persons who started that journey died on these ships, died. They were huddled into these vessels, these slave ships, as goods packed one on top of the other. And many of our forefathers did not make it here to the Caribbean. They're talking about years, 300 years of exploitation here on the plantations. And after in fact, Dr. Bubb, I was a teacher of history many years ago. And I
You
taught
were
about
actually my history teacher.
yes, many years ago. And you were one of my finest students, and I'm extremely proud of you, if I may say so. And we taught, and we spoke about the apprenticeship system. And I taught my students that the apprenticeship system was to acclimatize um, the enslaved people into caring for themselves, not realizing now that I have to relearn history myself. Because after the abolition of slavery, the British Parliament decided that the compensation package for these slave owners and plantation owners was 40 million pounds. What they did was to give 20 million pounds cash, and the other 20 million pounds or so was to be extracted over this apprenticeship period from the free labor of the formerly enslaved people. So even the apprenticeship period and the teaching of history, how our history was written and how it was taught to us, was again geared towards this sort of to keep us not knowing the truth, so to speak, so that the British have extracted as much as they could from us and from our forefathers. And this demand now for reparative justice is only fair. And we believe that this struggle must continue, and we will live to see the day when Britain and the other Western um, powers will sit on the table and discuss the issue of reparative justice with us. Already, some of the institutions are coming forward. They are doing some of the universities that has benefited directly from the slave trade and slavery and making scholarships and other things available. But of course, we want to see a more holistic approach with regards to the issue of reparations. And the Grenada National Reparations Committee, we are, as you know, strategizing and thinking about how we can now approach the Bank of England. They would have to answer to us here in Grenada with regards to how best they can make reparative justice available to us.
Absolutely. Now, how can citizens in Grenada get involved in the work of the Grenada National Reparations Committee?
Very good question. We have several subcommittees, and they can get in contact with myself. They can get in contact with yourself, with persons like Dr. Nico Dow, persons like Mr. Peter Antoine, John Augustine Martin, and join these committees. Also, they can support our efforts and our programs and so on, our educational programs, because there is a lot of work to do. And a lot of that work we have to do is to continue to educate our people or re-educate our people with regards to the issue of our history and the issue of reparations and so on, so that they can make contact with us to formally assist us in some of our work. And of course, persons are always invited to informally assist us. The members of the press can invite us to the media houses. They can join us with regards to sharing the word on social media and so on. Every Grenadian in every walk of life, so it's a national movement that we are starting, and every Grenadian is invited. Just this evening at 2 p.m., there is a regional discussion on how the relevance of the issue of reparations for our East Indian brothers and sisters. So this is not just about the descendants of African people, because the East Indian community that was brought under the period of the system of indentureship um, here in the Caribbean, they were exploited. What they were promised when they left India and so on, they were never given. If you look at the history, just a few hundred and so on was ever repatriated and went back to India. I mean, so that it is not just about the descendants of Africans. In Grenada, we still have persons that have Kalinago heritage as well. So that you will very much find that we here in Grenada, all races, all classes, and so on, there is significance and there is relevance with regards to the reparative struggle for all of us. The issue of
Absolutely.
our national debt and so on. And persons have to educate themselves with regards to the 10-point CARICOM plan. We cannot emphasize it too much, because when persons hear us speak about reparations, they think it's simply a matter of making a cash payment to us. We are saying no, it's more than that. It's an apology, it's investment in our health, in our education, debt forgiveness. We're talking about repatriation for those of us who so desire and so on. So, it's a lot more than simply thinking that all we are asking for from the major European powers is a blank check.
Absolutely. Now, Ambassador Gill, of course, you are a man of many hats. You're wearing many hats. And of course, before you go, I know that we are busy also preparing for Carnival, notwithstanding that there is an election before that. But Carnival is the major event for Grenada. It's really the return of Carnival, a major in-person Carnival. How are preparations going so far?
Excellent preparations, a lot of hard work, a lot of preparatory work. Over the last 2 months or so, we've had, up to yesterday, we've had judges workshops, calypso judges, soca judges, and so on. We're trying our best to enhance the capacity of our adjudicators. We've had a professional session also with our calypsonians and artists, soca artists, and so on, with regards to what to expect and so on, how in ways in which they can grow. Next week, next week Saturday, we do have we have a production meeting with all the calypsonians and soca artists, hosted by a person like Mr. Troy Garvey and Francis Urias Peters. The tents are preparing, mass bands are preparing, steel bands are preparing. We are engaging with, and I must say, hats off to the GTA, Grenada Tourism Authority. They have been working closely with us to promote and to market our festival outside of Grenada. We are working on things like additional flights and so on to see how best we can much persons who want to come to, because this, as you said, is the return. Time 19 we didn't have carnival due to COVID, so we are we're doing all that we can to ensure that it is hugely successful, and Grenada Carnival come back out with a bang. We have made certain strategic changes, of course, in how we are going to proceed with the major events of Carnival. For instance, the Calypso Finals will be the Thursday in Grenville. We have moved the Queen Show to the 27th of July, 2 weeks before. Then we have new events like the Canbule, where we sought to highlight our culinary culture. And we also having the Saturday after Carnival, we are going to do an event called Au revoir, where we say goodbye to our visitors and so on. So it's going to be a massive carnival, Kellan. You shouldn't miss it.
I would not be missing it.
I look forward to a program like
Go ahead.
A program like the Bubb Report, Kellan, on the streets of Carnival. Could you imagine this?
Yes.
You get a vantage point, like a Juve morning and so on, and you beam to the world, because your program is researched. You get good resource persons to be there with you and so on. And all of this is what will add substance to what we offer the world. But we, here in Grenada, we endeavor to make Grenada's Carnival Spice Mass the number one carnival in the Caribbean. I will make no apologies for saying that.
Ambassador Gill, thank you so much for bringing insights to the work of the Grenada Reparations Committee. And for those of you who want to get involved in the work of the committee, please contact Ambassador Gill or myself, or to the other resource people that he mentioned, including Dr. Dow and some other folks who are involved in this work. So we look forward to the lecture as well that's happening on Thursday. As a reminder, if you choose to attend the lecture in person, there is that option. And let me just share the flyer one more time. The topic of this year's lecture is Grenada's Case for Reparations. And the moderator will be Dr. Damian Graves. We have the panelists here, Kizzy Henry Cadet, Laura Trevelyan, who is a BBC correspondent, John Angus Martin, historian and archivist, Tesla Peterson, a PhD candidate, and Dunbar Campbell, who is a historical novelist. You can also log in via Zoom if you choose to take it in virtually. So that is what we have.
And just to
Ambassador?
Just to add, Dr. Bob, that soon we'll be establishing our secretariat so that you no longer have to contact us individually. But I believe in a matter of weeks, if not about a month's time, we will have our secretariat up and running. So the work is enhancing, is getting more intense, and soon time we will be operating almost full time with regards to our struggle for reparative justice.
Absolutely. Ambassador Ali Gill, thank you so much again for appearing on the Bubb Report. And I know that you are a busy man, so I would give you the opportunity to leave now. Folks, stand by while we get to another segment.
Thank you very
the Portia Simpson Miller administration.
Vashan has the next question to Team JLP.
There have been complaints about telecoms providers, dropped calls, poor internet, you name it. What's your plan to hold the telecoms providers accountable for the quality of service provided to customers?
It is a vexed issue. I think all of us here would have experienced the reality of a call dropping and just the real frustration. It is something that we have, as a government, been engaging our telecom providers through the OUR. We have engaged them in relation to ensuring that they live up to their service standards. And part of what we plan to do is to strengthen the OUR to ensure that they can hold these utility providers more accountable. From where I sit at the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, we've also called in our telecom providers to look at how we can utilize them to incorporate in smart agricultural practices, to help our fishermen in relation to communication when they're far out at sea. So we've already started that engagement process. There have been some commitments from our telecoms providers in relation to advanced investments, what they plan to do to strengthen their networks, and we plan to hold them to account. We have used the Consumer Affairs Protection Agency to really ensure that where complaints come in, they're followed up on in relation to our telecom providers. What more needs to happen? We believe that telecoms is what will really help us revolutionize something like agriculture. That is why in this manifesto we have put $3 billion to our agricultural sector to help our farmers, to help our fishermen, to invest in smart technology across the sector.
And let me just remind my colleague on the opposite that we produced 100,000 new jobs in response to the concerns
so much,
around
Dr.
jobs.
Tufton. Your time is up.
4.5 years of
Dr. Tufton, your time is up. PNP, it's your rebuttal, 45 seconds. Team PNP, your rebuttal.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that people need to understand again is that under the PNP administration, we revolutionized the telecom sector. We freed it up. We brought cell phones. We dismantled the monopoly at the time of telecommunications of Jamaica, and we made sure that people had options in terms of having telecoms. Another thing that we did, because ordinary Jamaicans could not actually buy a car, and we revolutionized the used car system where you can have taximen, etc., going through. And we created the Universal Access Fund. That fund had money to do the kind of broadband, and it had the money to actually put the access points in place. What has happened to it? Why hasn't it happened? The PMP was putting those plans across the country. What has happened to it under the JLP? It has stalled.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hannah. Mission crew, production and funding partners, and most of all, our viewers and listeners all across Jamaica and the diaspora. On behalf of the Jamaica Debates Commission, we're asking you to observe all the health and safety guidelines from the Ministry of Health, not just on Election Day, but every day. I'm Janella Precious. Pleasant viewing.
And welcome back, folks. As a reminder, the next segment of the Bubb Report comes to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City. They can be reached at 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity. And at this time, I wish to welcome our panel segment of the week. I have three third-party candidates here. Our returning guest, that's Ms. Andrea Rapier, as well as Mr. Denison Forrester. Mr. Denison Forrester is a first-time guest to the Bubb Report, and Mr. Earl Maitland is also a returning guest to the Bubb Report. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into the brass tacks of the politics, which is what we're here to discuss, I think it's always important for viewers and listeners to get to know who their candidates are on a more personal level. So, any one of you can answer this question. Tell us a fun fact. As a matter of fact, I want all of you to answer this question. A fun fact about yourselves that you've otherwise not talked about publicly, that you want to share here now. Ladies first, Andrea, would begin with you.
I knew you'd do that. A fun fact about me is I am a really good singer. I love performing. I love karaoke. And if I get on stage with a microphone, I think I might be able to blow your mind.
Ah, well, very well. Okay. All right, Mr. Maitland, a fun fact about you, sir.
Just, generally a people's person. There's nothing that I can't do except playing football, but that's it.
You can't play football. I'm surprised
Can't,
at that.
no.
You
Basketball,
cannot.
yeah, I cannot. I
Okay.
play basketball, pool, anything else.
All right. Mr.
Yeah.
George, a fun fact about you. You're a man of many talents.
Well, I'm Dennis Forrester George, and let me just say this. What I think people would, well, a lot of people know me now with this politics stuff, but I've created some of the beautiful music that Grenadians love. The artists who brought you beautiful songs like Grenada Would Rise Again, This Is Me, Jaja Me. So a lot of Grenadians who are seeing me for the first time in the political arena, if dig a little deep, they would find that some of their most favorite are beautiful Grenadian reggae songs. I'm one of the artists that brought you that songs.
All right. Now, the other icebreaker question here, and Andrea, I will start with you again. What specific areas in the constituency you'll be contesting or hoping to contest that would be considered a favorite landmark of yours? Earl, I know that you will be in St. George's Northeast, but and Mr. George in St. Andrew Northeast. But Andrea, I would start with you again.
I'll be in St. George's and most likely south or southeast. We'll finalize that this week.
Okay, so in those two places, what are some specific areas that you really like in those two areas?
Well, first of all, I'm from the south and I have lots of friends there. I've done a lot of social work there with GARB and with Care Grenada. So it makes sense. I live in the southeast. I also have a lot of relationships here, and I see areas here that as a community leader, I can make contributions to the development of these two areas. Particularly, I'm passionate about the south because we've made sort of our tourist central and a sub-city of St. George's, but the development has not been well planned. And so I'm sort of excited to be able to engage that community about going back to the architectural structure of what the city can look like from a planning and zoning perspective and beginning to upgrade that area so it actually can be beautiful, that there can be a proper flow of traffic and so forth. So that's it.
Okay, I was about to cut you off. Earl, you are contesting in St. George's Northeast. Is there a specific favorite go-to area in the constituency? A shop, perhaps?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm actually from St. Paul's. I live in St. Paul's. Most people would know Rogers Barbecue as a landmark for that area. And, it's home. It's my home. That's where I grew up, and I would definitely like to continue making contributions to better the entire area.
Okay, and Mr. George?
Well, my brother, as you know, I was privileged to be born. I was born and raised in the Republic of Paraclete. My blood is deeply rooted in the agricultural breadbasket of Grenada, the St. Andrews Northeast. Some of Grenada's most farmland and estates from that region, Dunfermline Estate, Boulogne Estate, Paul's Estate. So my history and my background and my blood is deeply rooted in agriculture. And I think St. Andrews, the whole parish of St. Andrews, especially the Northeast, is in a struggle again to rebound back as the breadbasket of the nation. And I think my candidacy and my fight is to make sure that St. Andrews Northeast once again shine as the breadbasket of the nation because of our agricultural background.
All right, now that we've gotten that icebreaker out of the way, Earl, I want to begin with you. In the last election cycle, Mr. Maitland, your political organization was barely able to make a dent in the polling. In fact, you as a candidate received less than 100 votes in the process. Why then are you running again, Mr. Maitland?
You're very generous, Kalon. You said less than 100. No, I would say, as a patriot, as one that cares about the country, the people of the country, including myself, my family, my friends, my neighbors, those who I may not know. There's a lot of obvious corruption that continues to take part in Grenada, a lot of victimization. And as in the last election, in 2018's election, I gave my word that whether I was able to achieve whatever goal that I aimed, I will continue what I have been doing for the people of Grenada. It is part of humanity, and this is something that we all should aspire to doing. We should be our brother's keeper, and this is why I'm back here again. Whether a dent would have been made in the polls, that is, in my opinion, it's trivial, but the the results, the ripple effects that I have caused, or just actually running has caused, and being able to be heard on behalf of persons not only in my constituency but Grenadians in general in areas such as police brutality and stuff like that. It has assisted me with getting through with a lot of philanthropy work as well. And Kellon, if you may permit me, after the other two, my good friends, I would like to speak about the electoral process and the electoral office.
We will get to that, absolutely.
Okay.
But Andrea, I would get to you now. You've recently come into public view, if you will, into the Grenadian imagination. What, since 2020, I would say. I know that you were part of GARP, and you've also done work with respect to educational consultancy. At least with your public posture and with respect to your political ambitions, it would appear that those political ambitions were concealed up till now. Did you always have political ambitions?
I always had ambitions that Grenada will become the best that she can become and to do my part in it. And I think the head leads the body. So to be significant, to really have long-term impact, then leadership is important. And I do separate that specifically from politics, but politics is the ring in which you have to step in as a leader.
So why did you not telegraph that intention earlier? Why now, before an election?
Number one, because I'm a soldier and I believe in strategic planning and execution. And just to add information that you may have missed, I didn't step into the public scene in Grenada in 2020. In 2010, I came to Grenada for 9 months, immediately noticed there was a huge need with single moms, and created a nonprofit, collaborated with GNOW, and we did a lot of work working with single parents and empowering women. I actually hosted a program on GBN as well during that 9-month period, did workshops with women, fed a lot of hungry families. So this, what I do is not new to Grenada. Maybe there might be a gap in the generation of recognition of that. So returning to Grenada in 2019, actually, I started noticing that there has to be a paradigm shift in the country. I believe that when I see a problem, I'm responsible for solution. So immediately I was living in New York at the time. I started returning to Grenada once a month at my own expense, working in communities, specifically teaching people about themselves, communication, conflict management. I did some work with a social services department as well and some training with them. So this isn't new. We started Care Grenada because there was a huge need during the lockdown to feed families and senior citizens. I was one of the founding members and actually one of the major administrators of that program. And we did that work. And I don't think every time we do something in the public, we have to sound the trumpet. I think we just need to meet the needs when we see them. And I know someone like Earl Maitland has done that. Perhaps his entire time has been in Grenada, and I applaud him for that. So now that it is time to step into the boxing ring of politics, now I have to be more persistent, more insistent, more defined about what I see for the country, what my organization sees for the country, and sound the trumpet, because we've been listening to a lot of noise. And so now the trumpet must be strategic. So this was the time to do it. It was the right time to have the right impact that we want to have. So it's not by error.
It's not by error. Okay. And Mr. George, the same question. Why now?
Well, my brother, I've been very active in Grenada over the last few years. After Hurricane Ivan, my drive to raise thousands of dollars with the song Grenada Would Rise Again. I have provided tremendous aid to the hospitals in terms of medical equipment. I came to Grenada a few years ago and saw people dying from lack of kidney dialysis, and I donated 2 kidney dialysis machine to the Department of Health, which was stolen. I was told was stolen. I have been very active in the community in terms of in the Grenville area, providing small loans for women to start their own businesses. When a gentleman came from the US and raped a little boy here and was charged $600 and sent back home in a one-way ticket back to the US, I led the struggle to get the FBI and the US law enforcement agency involved, which he pled guilty and will be going to jail for in the near future for almost 30 years for what he did to a child in Grenada. I've been very active in other areas in terms of the Methodist School rehabilitation program. So it's not why now for me. It's a matter of that I have seen what's going on in Grenada in terms of politics. As I told you before, I would like to see myself as a public advocate of the people, advocating the case for the people, for better government, for better institution, for better service. And I've looked around that we have one government in power for 28 years, and we have another government, election after election, committing what you call political malpractice. And I'm almost certain if things does not change soon, you'll maybe have another case of political malpractice taking place in Grenada, and then blaming the winner. And that's why I think it's vocal that I speak up now. It was through my candidacy now that this whole Molina contract to the St. Lucian company, I brought that issue out that people are scrutinizing now.
Yeah, but Mr. George, are you referencing the contract for the well, not the breakwater project. I'm saying the breakwater project. That's at the Molineux area. Yes.
Yes.
Except there is a particular bidding process there that's not political. So I did have a chance to listen to your claims, but based on the bidding process, it would appear as if the politicians obviously have no say in that. But there is a neutral bidding process there, and the Minister of Communication and Works did fact check you.
Totally incorrect.
So please proceed.
Totally incorrect. I have provided video recording where the Minister Cox said he had 18 companies showing interest in the project, where he contradicted himself, say he had 13. I had provided proof, video recording, when Minister Cox was quoted as saying the project was going to cost $6 million. I have video when he came back and said it was cost $10 million. Up to now, there has been no transparency regarding that contract. And Minister Cox, if called to the task and to put out that information, it would clearly show that he's not telling the truth. There was no cause for bidding on this project. This was a local project funded by government money. If you were interested in Grenadian companies getting that work, then that bidding should have been opened only to Grenadian companies. But when you put out a project like that for international bidding, that means you're inviting foreigners to come in to bid for a program that is paid for by the Grenadian government. And when you give a contract to a contractor from St. Lucia who go on national TV and boast of bribing politicians, and politicians coming to him on the eve of election to fund projects, and he's financing governments with $20 million, and on the eve of a Grenadian election, you have that a Grenadian minister or the Grenadian government go in and sign a contract with that same individual. There is cause for concerns. And what I'm asking Brother Cox, this is not about emotion. Release the information. Let us see the bids. Let us see how much the winning bid. Let us see the companies that bid and put the information out. So, my brother, to correct you, Minister Cox is wrong. The information is there and the facts is there.
Okay. Now, and this is a question I'm going to ask all three of you, third party candidates here. Why are you competing? Well, let me rephrase the question. You are all on an island by yourself. Would you not say it might have been a better idea if you combine forces? Because from what I'm hearing here, all of you seem to have very similar thought processes, very similar worldviews, right? You're very passionate about the issues. You're very passionate about people's development. So why are you not uh, combining forces, if you will, to be a credible third force, as the TGM was? Well, the now discredited TGM in many respects, because they're no longer a third force. Andrea, I would start with you first.
Well, I'm glad you started with me. Dennis, should I tell him?
You're going to be breaking some news here today. I would love to hear that.
Yes. Denison is now part of power. We recognize that we have the same vision for the country, and power is not about politics. It's about leadership and and taking care of the business of Grenada. And so we have combined our efforts and our vision to be able to deliver that. Earl, we have already talked with Earl. We already agree on the same thing. And Power's commitment is that we will get behind a candidate who we believe is good for the country, regardless of which party that they were with. So Earl will have our support, and we will not place a candidate where Earl is actually contending, because we believe in the kind of leadership Earl can bring. We believe in his credibility and his service. And that's Power's model, because it's about Grenada now. It's not about politics.
So Earl, why are you not part of Power?
Well, we have an agreement, Miss
Right.
just said. So we're here for the country, and one of the problems that we face in Grenada is the partisan solution, or apparent solution of partisan politics. We have
Earl is breaking up there. Earl, your connection is really poor. I'm going to have to stop Earl. But I think Earl was making the point there about partisanship. That is not the direction of the conversation where we were going. But let us talk about partisanship and partisan politics. Do we believe that Grenada is fiercely divided along partisan lines? Andrea?
Grenada is fiercely divided along partisan lines and many other lines. I don't think the partisan line is the base of our division. I think it's just one of the consequences of a deeper division.
Okay, Dennison?
Well, I would say it's that's the case. It is divided, but I don't think that's the sad reality of this is that the people of Grenada has lost focus on most of the people that I speak to. They have been so the politicians have used so many different ways of, I don't want to say tricking the people, but like what I've realized, the people does not understand in Grenada anymore the power of their vote. It seems like they think that the power of their vote is being held in the hand of the politician, and that's not the case. The power of their vote is held in their hand. They have the possibility by their vote to make change, to bring change, and to make things happen. And what I'm seeing is that they're depending on these people, these politicians, to make it happen for them. So they're not holding this politician accountable. To me, the politicians are holding the people accountable. And because if you don't vote for them, if you don't speak for them, you don't have a job tomorrow. And that's very sad. I meet people who are afraid to speak because they're frightened that if they say the wrong thing, they will be victimized politically. So I think definitely there is a division there, but I am more concerned that the division is not only political, but it's also mental. And we have to break that cycle.
Let's see if we can get a better connection from you. Are you hearing me? Because you broke up there.
Yes,
you were making a point about partisanship and partisan politics in the context of Grenada.
Yes,
but go ahead.
So what happens is persons, our employees, our public servants, get into the parliamentary office, and although they would have fundamental disbeliefs or disagreements on certain topics, they would say yes, they would agree based on their obligation to the party. And that is a very dangerous thing for a democracy. When we cherish that they have to be free from fear and to be free from want. And this is the issue. This is, like, to me, this is the root of all evils. And if I may, Kelon, I would like to speak about the electoral process and the representation that we do have in the office there, if you do permit me, please.
Yes, you will get the opportunity. We will have an opportunity to talk about that. I know that you're very anxious to get to that. But panel, what we want to do is to really disaggregate the rest of our conversation into three areas. The first one being the economy and debt management. The second one being poverty alleviation and education. And the third one being healthcare and sustainable development. Now, I would begin with the economy and debt management. What is your vision, all of you, with respect to having a sustainable economy, given Grenada's size and Grenada's scale with respect to what Grenada can produce and is able to produce, and its ability to manage its current debt stock, in addition to the upcoming debt burden that would be foisted upon the state with respect to the pension. So let us talk about how we are going to propose a sustainable solution that brings balance for economic growth and also managing our debt efficiently. Andrea?
Yes. So first of all, I want you to think, let's just bring it down to a micro level so that all our viewers understand where I'm going to take the conversation. If you look at managing your budget at home and you focus on your expenses, you're going to see your expenses ballooning if you don't balance that focus on generating income. The issue for us is not our debt, it's our debt to GDP ratio. Our GDP is the amount of money circulating, streaming through our own economy. Money I am spending, money you're spending, money companies are spending. That's our GDP. You can also look at it as income being generated within the country. So money I am making, what you're making, what the government's making, what a company is making. That GDP, that flow, that cash flow within our own economy, that is what really determines whether or not our debt is healthy. So we need to actually generate more money, bringing that into the cash flow of our country. If we're only selling to each other while we're gaining debt, that debt acquisition is going to supersede our GDP, which is actually very common. So what we need to do now, instead of just circulating money among ourselves, we need to produce and sell and extract money from other economies into our own, thus increasing our cash flow within the country, our buying and selling power. To increase the buying power of Grenada takes care of our debt to GDP ratio. And that's where we're failing, because we are not productive enough, not because we don't have productivity, not because we don't have resources, but we don't have systems. There is no vision from the leadership. There is no strategy to empower the buying power of every individual Grenadian. And unless our individual citizens increase their buying power, our economy is going to struggle and our debt ratios are going to be high. So power solution is produce, 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 and sell, sell, sell. Nothing happens till you sell something. There isn't a lack of money in the world, and there isn't a lack of markets to export. We have to sell outside of our own economy at a rate that really boosts the buying power quickly. Earlier, when we were talking about reparation, our guests talked about back then they were making just cents for their work, and families weren't able to feed their children, and the older child had to step up and help care for the younger ones. It sounded like he's describing Grenada in 2022. A mother who is working at a hotel for 800 EC a month is making cents on the US dollar per day. Not sustainable. Her buying power must increase. She must have a way to make more money for the same effort and work smart as well as hard. So unless our government, and power brings that to governance, brings the business model of governance, looking at our country from an economic base, knowing that our economics is what will develop our healthcare, what will develop education, and all our other sectors, we have to be concerned about the buying power of the individual Grenadian. And if you're not convinced, look at nations like Canada and the UK and the US. This is why they stimulate the economy by giving these packages. For example, during COVID, there were all these stimulus checks. Why is the government giving money to citizens? To keep a cash flow, to keep the economy alive, to keep the bloodstream running. And in Grenada, even though there are academics sitting in our government that understand economy, they don't understand business. And more than that, they don't understand the power, the true power of leadership and the goodwill of our people.
All right, and how do we address, and you said produce. What you're suggesting here is that there has to be significant upscaling, if you will. What specific areas of economic activity do you propose that will be able to bring that kind of economies of scale to the country?
Glad you asked. So in our ecosystem, and you're going to hear me be very redundant about the word ecosystem, because not one sector is independent of another. And so for to properly scale, we have to shift all our sectors simultaneously. And we could do that because it is a chain. You pull the chain, all the links will follow. So healthcare. Actually, I'm going to give you the top 4 because there's too many to talk about. So education. Education will boost our economy. We just heard what Mr. Dennison talked about, bringing in this contractor from St. Lucia for our work. I've heard discussions on the ground about that. And part of that conversation is that, there were no contractors here who were capable. Well, I've heard that excuse from many other sectors that we bring talent to Grenada for. We have to develop a component culture where people have skill training, whether they want academics or whether they want vocational training, where we offer vocational skills so that people can upgrade their competence. If you can produce more and you could do it at an excellent rate, then we can export. And when I say competence, I am talking about an entire facelift of our education system. An entire facelift of education gives us an economic facelift because in education is wrapped entrepreneurship. Education without entrepreneurship is just the regurgitation of information, because in entrepreneurship, there's creativity, there's solutionists. So with education, we now wake up solutions. We bring the innovators to the front. We can find them, we can identify them, and they can now innovate our other sectors. So we want to look at education, entrepreneurship, healthcare. And as we are developing these sectors for our own people, they become byproducts for tourism. So that our tourism changes from what we have now, the quick, short stay, low producing tourism, to high producing tourism, longer stay tourism, like medical tourism, education, philanthropy tourism. We can go on and on and on. Let's look at agriculture. During the revolution, there was an explosion of agro-processing. That has died. The buildings now sit in ruins as a monument of a failed system. And not a failure on the revolution side, but on failure of government thereafter. We need to wake up our agro-processing community. We need to digitalize and bring technology, farming technology to our farmers so we could do vertical farming. Grenada is not a large country. It's 120 square miles. How do we create more land space so that we can create more agriculture for higher productivity, for agro-processing, for exports? Vertical farming. Take 1 acre of land and turn it into 10 acres so that we increase productivity. And I can follow this cycle, and I will have to take your whole program to go through all of them, but we do have the resources to do it. And we have a diaspora. I'm going to give you this one more thing. Our diaspora is a resource for development. While we look all over the world for solutions, we need to bring our diaspora in to fill our competency gaps so that we could upgrade our sectors and become productive and scale very quickly.
Now, Ms. Rapier, I'm going to just push back on something you said there with respect to the project, whether or not we hire Grenadians or not. But I think it's important for us to also recognize that Grenada is part of the Caribbean single market and economy, such that if you have Caribbean nationals from other countries that are duly qualified to perform a particular job, that the Caribbean single market and economy allows them to apply for particular jobs in the same way that it allows Grenadians, for example, suitably qualified Grenadians, to apply for jobs and go to other countries to work. There are many Grenadians who are successful, who are working in other Caribbean jurisdictions. So I think it's important. Yes, I get the point that we have to build capacity at home, but at the same time, I think it can be a little bit sort of close-minded to say, well, jobs for Grenadians only, right? When Grenadians are also working in other jurisdictions across the Caribbean. But if you want to quickly push back there, yes.
If we were saying that jobs are Grenadians only, it'd be close-minded. But I will tell you this, as a leader, we're not saying that, first of all, so let's dismiss that claim. As the leader of any nation, it's your country first. Whatever trade agreements, whatever other alliances that we make is second to our own country. Charity begins at home. It's a good old saying, and we should apply to our politics. For our leaders, Grenada is first. As Prime Minister of Grenada, my job is to ensure that there's security, there's sustainability, and there are systems in place for the Grenadian people first to achieve economic and social success. After that, the surplus goes elsewhere. So it isn't that we are eliminating possibilities. We want our people to have those same possibilities. But our people should not get the crumbs of possibilities. They need to be front and center at the table with their name, a seat reserved for them. And this government for the last 20-something years has not reserved a seat at the table for Grenadian people. And there's much evidence outside of this specific corner of our conversation that we can find evidence of that.
Let me bring you back here concerning debt management. What are your thoughts with respect to, in addition to all that Andrea has articulated here, is there anything else that that she missed that perhaps you wanted to add?
Okay, so I believe Ms. Rapier, she summed it up excellently. She spoke about resilient infrastructure and institutions, investing in the human resource, things such as the hospital and everything like that. But before I do add, I would like to say that, Kellon, in the laws of Grenada, conflicts are not to be perceived. And having one who has admitted to sourcing or funding a government $20 million US per year, it does bring some sort of discomfort to the people. And I do agree that Grenadians should have the ability and a priority when it comes to things such as biddings and so forth. The protection has always been there for the Grenadian people. Looking at our laws, just by simply going into the Ministry of Labor, for one to have access to getting a work permit, no Grenadian on island should be capable or able of being able to complete that job that the work permit is being sourced for. So the persons who have implemented and created those things took into consideration, we cannot leave our people to get the crumbs, as Ms. Rapier has said. Now, what I believe also in debt management, there is one key factor that we also have to include in debt management, and it is to avoid debts where it is able to happen, right? Avoid debts by all costs. And I would like to point out some areas where our authoritarians would have dug us deeper into the pits of debts. For instance, I would like to start off with the oxygen plant at the General Hospital, which was down for 2 years. It only took 45 minutes for some Navy men from America who just happened to be sailing outside of Grenadian waters to come and fix. This is a problem that was lasting for 2 years. It took 45 minutes to fix. Now, let us ask ourselves the question and answer unbiasedly. Could the government have provided that fix that was needed instead of importing oxygen tanks from elsewhere? Now, let us look at the lawsuits against the state that could have been avoided. We have seen many public servants, including Ms. Gemma Bain Thomas, Mr. Willen Thompson, who believed that they were victimized by the administration, and they brought it to court. And they were awarded. They were found to be constitutionally correct. Let us look at the state vehicles that are being abused by the persons in public service. For instance, we all are aware that our ministers and many public servants are able to go to the back of the central police station and have gas filled, right? Their vehicles filled with gas for free at the cost of taxpayers. There's a lot of money that has been wasted on failed projects. I remember looking at the news one time and I saw Honorable Minister Gregory Bowen standing in Parliament with a smirk on his face, reporting to the people of Grenada. And that was not long ago, that the government of Grenada used one of Microsoft's programs illegally, and that cost the people of Grenada $800,000. This money could have been, it could have gone into dialysis treatment. It could have gone into education, or just generally into fixing the roads or wherever it would benefit the people and add to the sustainability. Look at the project that was recently done in Laborie. We had a report from Honorable Minister Nolan Cox when he said basically that a mistake was made and everything has to be dug up and done over again. There has been money missing from the marketing board. There has been money missing from the seed programs. We had permanent secretary, Ms. Veronica Charles, who reported, according to the news articles, that ghost payments were made to persons that could not have been found. We are having debt swaps at this time where our lands are being given out. There has been so much money that has been wasted and it has brought us into debt. So when we're speaking about debt management, we should ensure that our money is not wasted. I have seen where over $20 million has gone into fixing 2 NADMA buildings or constructing 2 buildings for NADMA, one in Manjaloo and one in Karaku. And I believe the one in Karaku would have been allocated with $17 million. To date, I have not heard of anything. We barely get warnings from NADMA when the wind blows or whatever the case is. There are so many positions in government that have been created for political affiliates and as a factor of nepotism. Just recently, again, after the last election, the Prime Minister created a job for his son in the Ministry of Finance as the legal advisor for the Ministry of Finance. And this is a job that constitutionally belongs to the Solicitor General and the Attorney General, but this job position has been created. It brings us further into debt. We have a lot of offices, public offices, such as the integrity.
Essentially, your thesis here is that with respect to government wastage, your thesis is that there can be a reduction
Yes.
in the capacity of government, which will then
Yes.
produce savings for the
Yes,
state.
that is correct. That is
Okay,
correct.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we quickly have to move along here to poverty alleviation and education. What is your vision? Dennison, did you want to add something?
Yes,
Yes, go ahead.
let me just say this, my brother. It is strange that people are accusing me and Sister Rapier of being narrow-minded when we decide to stand up for Grenadian companies and Grenadian jobs. with the lucrative contracts, with no kind of transparency being shipped out to St. Lucia. But no one criticized Minister Emily Pierre, who went in a national rally a couple of days ago and basically said people from St. George's would not be allowed to come to work in Grenville on the new ministry complex that is built in Grenville. To me, that is narrow-minded. The last time I checked, we were one Grenada, and it's there. The video is there when she blatantly made that statement. Now, let me just say this to you, my brother. In regards to the national debt, first of all, we don't even know what the national debt is for. No one told us where the $81 million for that Grenada deal came from. No one told us where that $51 million for the shrimp farm came from. No one, so far, we have no idea what is being owed to China. So when we talk about national debt, first we have to know that there is a figure, but what is the debt for? How we accumulate that debt. And I think that is what is frightening to Grenadians. And I'm telling you, after election, if God, it happens that the NNP lost the next election, Grenadians better prepare to wake up, because China is going to hand us that bill. They're going to hand us a bill.
Well, Mr. George, I don't want to cut you, but we do in the estimates of revenue and expenditure annually, and that can be checked. They do provide the data with respect to what the current debt is, as required by law.
And that's true. But
are you suggesting then that there are other elements of expenditure and debt that's not included in that properly constituted document?
But there might be disclosure of the debt amount, but have there been full disclosure where that debt arise from? So far, the government haven't told you where they got that money to pay Grenada, that $80-something million. Did we print that money in Grenada, or we print it up in Paraclete? So what I'm saying to you, my brother, let me just focus on this. The IMF pointed out to three main areas where we can improve Grenada economy: agriculture, the agricultural base, skill training, tourism, and renewable energy. And in terms of agricultural base, as Sister Andrea said, we need to develop our agro-industry again. We need to look for international market for our produce, for our nutmeg, for our cocoa, for our papaya. When it comes to skills training, we need to invest heavy in coding, computer science. We need to start teaching kids at a young age of critical thinking. Because as you know, Brother Bob, you could be here in Grenada, but working for a firm in Australia or working for a firm in the United States because of virtually. And when it comes to tourism, yes, I'm all for tourism. We need to continue to market and build our tourist industry, but not at the expense of Grenadians, not at the expense of our beaches. When you give a company 30-year tax break to come and build a resort in Grenada, and you cannot give a Grenadian that is coming from the US, coming home to start a business, a 1-year tax break, I have a problem with that. So, and then the other thing is renewable energy. We pay a very high rate for electricity here in Grenada. And I think Grenada have to focus on renewable energy. We have to move to solar. We have to move to other areas where we could decrease our dependency on in that segment. So I address the debt, and I'm also addressing in terms of development where we going from here.
Absolutely. Well, with the repurchase of Grenlec, regardless of what you might think about the repurchase of Grenlec, one of the benefits that ought to come from this, based on the judgment and based on the legislation, is that now citizens should be able to take advantage of solar and renewable energy in a way that they were not able to under the WRB arrangement. So we'll see how that will play out there, Mr. George. And let us go on to talk about healthcare. Healthcare has always been an issue in the country, in the context of poverty alleviation as well. I tend to like to link those two, because I believe poverty can affect health. It can have a serious impact on your health outcomes. What is your vision, Andrea and Earl, for a Grenadian health system that would be very sustainable and equitable and efficient in a way that that you believe it currently may not be.
Okay. So may I go first?
Go ahead. Yes, Earl.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, even since the last election, one of the proposals to the people was that we have clinics, hospital facilities, and everything, all the health facilities open 24/7, and not only having one day of having a doctor at a clinic. Now, sometimes you would have to go to the nearest clinic in your constituency or in your parish, and they would tell you on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or probably Friday that there is no doctor. You need to go to either Maryborough or you need to go to the general hospital. Now, that in itself, it takes away from the constitutional guarantees that persons are granted, that persons have. Now, the clinics should be open 24/7 and well staffed, full of the necessary equipment. Now, why is it that one cannot have a back slab and a cast put on at a clinic? Why does one have to go to the general hospital and sit for 5 to 10 hours just to have that put on? You know, that is what we are trying to take away. Now, imagine, Kellon, in 2022, having the cost of one of the cheapest dialysis machines being $8,000 US. The Grenadian government they have not installed dialysis machines in our hospital. So persons from St. Patrick's and from the furthest point, St. Patrick's, have to travel in their weakest stages to get down to the town of St. George and have dialysis treatment that has been provided, thankfully, by Mr. Trevor Forrester in a private clinic. Now, 2 years ago, January 6th, we would have heard the Minister of Health say that he would install 5 portable dialysis machines in the General Hospital. That has not happened. Persons like myself have taken the challenge, because it is a challenge, to raise funds for our Grenadian people who are in need of urgent medical treatment, inclusive of dialysis and so forth. Now, I can envision Grenada not only providing dialysis treatment, but having kidney transplants as well. Now, that would be less costly on the taxpayer in the instead of having the government giving $3,000 per dialysis patient per month. You know, there's a lot of things that are needed. Even if you look at the building, one may go to the hospital with a minor injury, and if that person has a respiratory problem, just given the amount of moss that is on the windows or the building or anything like that, it would definitely take away from them. There is a lot, Kellon, that I have laid out in the manifesto. I mean, we are having the absence of X-ray machines that constantly break down, CT scans, just looking at the reality of what has happened, it should disturb every Grenadian. Having to go to a private clinic to get an X-ray done or a CT scan done. I have seen, and I must commend the government at this time for performing the first CT scan, but it's a bit, it's a bit late, and we really do hope it's not an election gimmick that has been placed on the people.
Okay. All right. Andrea? Healthcare poverty alleviation.
Yes, healthcare and poverty alleviation. As I respond to this, I'm going to pull from an earlier statement you made, and we sort of went over it when we talked about partisanship. The great divide is education, which is leading into what I'm about to say now. Forcing politicians to deliver something relevant to earn the vote. Forcing politicians every single election cycle If you're an incumbent, what did you promise? And what have you delivered of those promises? What have you done since then? So this state that Grenada is in our healthcare, we don't have healthcare in Grenada. We have sick care. Power now wants to bring healthcare. So we're going to transform sick care into healthcare. St. George's should have a viable research and development hospital, fully equipped with all the state-of-the-art supplies and equipment, just like you would find in a first world country that we fly to New York or Miami for. That should be able to be done right here in St. George's. There should also be the same representation on the northern side of our island. Now, our clinics, I understand the logistics of having perhaps one doctor in the clinic once a week, because maybe there's not enough volume to really justify the resource going into that, having that doctor sitting there. But one of the things that we have to look at in development, Kellon, is that we have to develop Grenada our way. It's not a copy and paste version of anything that works for us. We have to take what works, we have to tweak it, we have to make it relevant to serve our people. So in the clinics where there's one doctor 1 day a week, the other 4 days of the week, could that doctor not do home visits? We have elderly that need home care. There are other places that that energy and that resource could be spent that are unmet needs as we speak right now. So again, back to the crumbs, our government needs to look holistically at what is the need of our people. What do we need? If you look at a patient leaving St. Patrick's, the cost of coming to General Hospital, just the transportation cost. Now imagine doing it unwell. We have not served, and then I say we, not power, but this government has not served Grenada in a way that is relevant. Our healthcare system needs to be relevant for us. So power believes that traditional medicine must coexist with holistic medicine simultaneously at all our clinics, at all our hospitals. We also believe that Carriacou and Petit Martinique should not have to come to Grenada for proper health care. We cannot take a sick patient and put them on that rough, rocky boat ride, or even that bumpy plane ride to bring them to Grenada. There are services, yes, that would be unique to our research and development hospital, and we should be able to heli transport our patients from Petit Martinique, from the northern end of our island, from Carriacou to St. George's for those specialty services. But right there at home in their local islands, they should have efficient, functional medical services that they can be cared for very quickly. Now, let's look at our medical community. They are underpaid, like most other Grenadians. How much can you extract and demand from someone who is underpaid and overworked? So when you go to the hospital, it's beyond the fact that you're waiting 8 to 10 hours. It's beyond the fact that the X-ray machine is never working. What service are you getting when you come to the hospital? Customer service is as important as the service itself that you're trying to receive. So we have to create an environment in Grenada in healthcare where healthcare is actually healthcare, which is spirit, soul, and body, mental care, psychosocial care. It's important that our healthcare system does not just look at putting a bandage on a child as physical, as healthcare. What is his or her emotional state? What is the common effect of the experience? Waiting 10 hours at the hospital does not lend to good health, because there's the mental health, there's emotional health, there's holistic health. So it's time for us to go back to the drawing board. Our current healthcare system needs to be wrapped up and dumped and start again. And we have had several attempts in the past here in Grenada through the NDC government. I know someone who has approached the NNP government with a very viable option for healthcare. And we have a unique opportunity because of our natural resources, all of our herbs, that we can use that also as a means of tourism for the medical professional community, where Grenada can become a place for studying our herbs, where it become a place where there can be production of natural medicines. And our local Grenadians are actually very creative in creating oils and other natural medicines out of our produce. Why don't we scale this as an industry and export this and also have it as a viable option in our pharmacies? We need to start over. Almost everything in all our sectors, we have to take a look at it again. We have to start over, and we have to see Grenadian people as deserving And I can tell you the proof is that we don't. And the reason I know that is because the people who could afford to fly out for care, which includes our prime minister and government ministers, they don't think that the healthcare system here is what they deserve. They leave to get what they deserve, leaving the rest of Grenada in an undeserving situation. Our people are deserving. They're deserving of good healthcare. And Power is going to deliver that. Power has the resources to be able to do it. In our networks, in our investment pool, we can get it done, and it's time to get it done now.
All right. You candidates have said a lot, and what we want to do is to come up for some air, and we will get to some closing comments. Specifically, I want the closing segment to concentrate on your constituencies, the constituencies where you intend to run. So viewers and listeners, please stand by. Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are?
To the cards that I have drawn that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. The unions are not threatening to withdraw their labor, and neither are they threatening to shut the country down, as you did.
I think your summarization of my position is highly inaccurate, and may I dare say a bit inflammatory.
The strategy did not work the last time for you. So what would make this?
Well, you're assuming that we're doing the same strategy.
And welcome back, folks. As a reminder, we're having a conversation with three of the third-party candidates who will be contesting in the upcoming elections in Grenada. Actually, we just also broke some news from one of that candidate, Mr. George, who would be partnering with Miss Rapier at the Power team. Miss Rapier, I'm sure I would be asking you about the name of your political organization shortly. But Mr. George, I want to begin with you. Yes, go ahead quickly.
I just wanted to say something regarding the healthcare and poverty. Real quick, before I give my closing statement.
Yes.
Today in Grenada, healthcare is no longer a right. It's a privilege. And as Sister Rapier says, our country has become so divided by the have and the have-not, the well-connected to those who have no connection. That has infiltrated in almost every segment of our society. Even in the simplest thing and going to clear a barrel on the port. Every simple aspect of our society have now been infiltrated by your connections. And regarding to healthcare, it's sad that when you check into the hospital, or any of our two hospitals, you are worried, and I have family members that whether you're going to come back out. So, and definitely that have to change. We must start healthcare by building new hospitals for our people. Our healthcare system still cater to our citizens in the manner in which they lived 30, 40 years ago. The Grenadian diet is not the same. The people don't eat the same food. In 30, 40 years ago, my grandmother never been to a doctor because they eat different type of food. They live different type of lives. Now, regarding to poverty, there was a report recently by the Bubb Report that says Grenada have one of the highest standard of poverty in the OECS at 32%. And out of that 32%, roughly 13% of the population are in extreme poverty. And out of that, and there was also a study done by Grenada Household and Budget Committee that shows poverty in Grenada is at 25%. And out of that 25%, 21% of those living in poverty in Grenada are people that employed, people who have a job and work for the government. And poverty and terrible healthcare are tied together. When people can't eat properly, they're going to get sick. When people are living in poverty, they no longer have the options of going to pay a doctor at the first sight of something is wrong. And what happens is that people wait too long before it's too late. I know people that have to mortgage their little piece of land to travel to Barbados and Trinidad and the US in order to see a doctor. We must invest in telemedicine. There is no reason why a patient can stand in front of X-ray machine in St. George's and have a doctor in the US diagnose what is wrong with them. And I'm not talking about a US doctor. I'm talking about a Grenadian doctor who owes service to the Grenadian people, who we educate and send abroad to do their residency and didn't come back. Let's get in touch with our doctors in the US and say, let's work together through telemedicine, where you could make your contribution back to Grenada without even having to be here. So what I'm saying to you, my brother, in order, healthcare, poverty, they all tied together. And we have to at least lift our people out of poverty, and we have to provide adequate healthcare. You know, you and I, Brother Kel and Bob, you don't go to a restaurant and insult the cook because you're frightened what the cook is going to give you to eat. When you have a prime minister complaining that the nurses are stealing the chicken, he doesn't have to worry about going to the hospital. He goes to the US to get a checkup, but Mr. Thomas in Moya can't afford to go to the US to get a checkup. Mr. Brown in Guave can't afford to go to the US to get a checkup. So that's all I have to say on that subject. Healthcare in Grenada should be a right, not a privilege. We have to bring back discussion on the National Health Insurance Scheme, which would give poor people an insurance card, that if they're sick in Grenville, they could go see a doctor in Grenville, and they don't have to come to the hospital all the way in St. George's to get health care. And if they have that insurance card provided by the government, it would ease the burden on the healthcare system here, and it would provide quick and adequate remedies for people in St. Andrews to go see a doctor when something is wrong. And it make it easier for a doctor to see them because the doctor know that he's getting paid.
Okay, Mr. George, quickly, you are intending to contest the constituency of St. Andrew Northeast. You'll be coming up against Ms. Kate Lewis, Honorable Kate Lewis, who is the current Member of Parliament. Now, she has released a handy brochure of her accomplishments in the constituency over the last 5 years. On infrastructure, she's listed, for example, the bridge to Moonlight City, La Poutre constructed, Paradise Preschool, Paraclete Bridge, Pearls Basketball Court, construction of a clubhouse for Paraclete, Baghdad Road construction, and the list goes on with respect to what's happening there. But highlighted there on the list is the work on the Simon Cultural Center, which work has recently started, as we know. Then she goes on to list human resource development, youth development, improvement in the quality of life. And this is what she's offering her constituents with respect to what they can look forward to. Retrofitting of the old Paradise Preschool into library and resource center, construction of the Grenada Christian Academy, construction of the Baghdad Resource Center, lighting of La Poutre, Carrier Plainfield, the mini justice factory at La Poutre, infrastructure, strengthening of the main Tivoli medical station in order to facilitate reopening. Now, that is essentially her manifesto of what she has been able to accomplish. This is what you are coming up against. How do you provide a contrast to what the member of the parliament for the area has indicated through this flyer?
My brother, let me just say this to you. With all due respect to Minister Lewis, she has a right to her own opinion, but she doesn't have a right to the facts. The fact that she has to put that out of herself speak for itself. Let the constituents, the people that she has been representing, put that out. Let them come forward and say, this is what you have done for me. The fact that she has to go and promote what she claimed to have done speak for itself. Now, let me say this to you. A few years ago, there was a young lady from Simoon who went on national television, and it went worldwide, with 3 children living in a terrible, terrible situation. Water coming in the children in the night. They're living in a little shack with galvanized. That sister went to Kate Lewis, Minister Lewis, and she asked for help. And Minister Lewis said to her, go and make lime juice and stand up on the road and sell it. When the women of Pearls met Minister Lewis, and asked for help, she told them, go and call GBN News. I don't care about a stadium or the Simon project is fine, yes. But before you build a stadium in Simoon, build proper houses for the people that is living in Baghdad behind the pavilion, or else we're going to have a Yankee Stadium situation where you have Yankee Stadium, the richest baseball team in the world, in the middle of the South Bronx of poverty. So before you build that Simon Convention Center, take that money and go and build proper houses for the people that is living in this terrible, terrible situation in Baghdad. So the sister could promote all, she could put this out herself. I heard different from the constituent of the Northeast. And most of the stuff that you just mentioned is stuff that has been done recently and is project that is ongoing. Where have the minister been for the last 4 years? The people of St. Andrews Northeast don't want to look forward. They don't want to look forward. They want to know what happened. Why was not this done in the past? They were looking forward 4 years ago. Are you asking them today to look for another 4 years forward?
So how then would your candidacy be different? How would your vision be different to what Minister Lewis and the NNP is offering in that constituency, or even the NDC for that matter? The NDC candidate Tessa Sensei, who's also contesting in that constituency.
My brother, my candidacy would be different because I'm a doer. When I went down to Pearls and I saw the condition of this lady was living in, I didn't tell her go and make lime juice and sell. I took my own money, and with the help of Brother Earl Maitland and there another young brother from Simoon, we built that house. And today that woman and her children have a proper home to live. And not what is most troubling, she wasn't given one piece of board from the same minister and the NNP because they didn't like that she went to the media and asked for help. They were sharing on board all to everybody in Simoon, but they didn't see a fit to give her one piece of galvanized. I am a doer, okay? I made a plan that if I'm lucky to serve the people of St. Andrews, I would not even take a salary. My salary would go into a fund to go back to the people. So I'll be different because I'll be for agriculture. I'm not a talker, I'm a doer. And a doer with when I came to Grenada and I saw there was no kidney dialysis machines in Grenada and people were dying of kidney dialysis, when I got back to New York, I sent 2 down. So, my candidacy is like an advocate for the people. There is replacing Paraclete near the Beto Bridge that you can't even pass because the road collapsed. I guess they wouldn't have enough time to fix it before the next election. Magidun Road, one of the main roads that lead from Paraclete to St. John's and Hermitage, was up to recently unpassable. Blaise Road, up to recently unpassable. So what I'm saying to you, the minister could put this stuff out, saying that this is what she's going to do. Where was her? What's about her promise? She promised that Simon project 4 years ago. But I would say to the minister, that money you're taking and putting that Simon project, put it to build houses for people in Baghdad. Let's put it towards Maribor Hospital. So when the same people in Simon get sick, they could go to Maribor Hospital and see a doctor. Put it towards, let me tell you, St. Andrews Northeast, it's a very beautiful area. It is one of Grenada most, when it comes to farmland, as I said, we have some of the richest farmland there, but we have extreme poverty there, as you know, brother Bob. And there is people living in extreme poverty there that need a little helping hand, not when election is near, but they need a helping hand all through the 4 years, all through the 5 years when you're supposed to be representing them.
All right, Earl, St. George's Northeast, the constituency of St. George Northeast. Why are you not combining your energies with Mr. Ron Redhead of the NDC? Both of you philosophically are very passionate about the same things. As a matter of fact, you've complimented the gentleman, and he's also complimented you for the work you do with respect to humanitarianism in Grenada. Why are you not combining your energies instead of attempting to split votes?
Well, you see, the thing is, Kellan, Ron and I, we are very good friends, and we have worked together on numerous projects for the betterment of the people of Grenada. Unfortunately, though, we share different fundamentals on the political agenda of the NDC. Now, the difference here, my brother, with GEM, Grenada Empowerment Movement, and Earl Maitland is that Earl Maitland raises funds to assist people in need, not only of medical, but of shelter and other constitutional guarantees that have been refused by the said government and authoritarians. Now, the two major political parties in Grenada, they raise funds to campaign. And that in itself, for any patriot, would be an issue. It would be a direct no to patriotism on a whole. Now, I have listened to the set accomplishments of the minister that is running in the constituency of Brother Denison George, and I'm not impressed that it took 4 years. 4 years is a very long time. And if I would say that Mr. George, myself individually, many other patriots would have accomplished much more without having access to the consolidated fund just by ourselves. I'm not speaking collectively on projects that we would have worked on. Many other individuals would have accomplished much more within the 4 years. And it is difficult to fathom why is it that this is being put out as though it was not a service to the people from a public servant, using the people's money and looking for the tanks and so forth. This is the duty. We would like to hear, and I agree with Mr. George, we would like to hear about the lives that have been touched by the minister. We want to see the passion. We want to see the love for the people. Now, I would like to say to not only my constituents, but to constituents around Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, as candidates or caretakers of minor parties that are not spoken of by local media and so forth. This, Mr. Bubb,
well, I beg to defer. I have given you that platform today.
Right. No, I said,
please
yeah.
exclude me from that designation.
Okay.
There is a tendency for some in Grenada to conflate me with all sorts of untrained people down there, and I'm not. But go ahead, please.
Okay. So it is, it's a difficult task. We have been on the ground working in the best interest of our country because we believe we ought to be our brother's keeper. All right, not just conveniently, but we ought to be our brother's keeper, and we have been kept out. Even when it comes to the electoral office, Mr. Bubb, I would say, a few Sundays ago, I noticed the supervisor of elections on your platform, and it was there I learned of a meeting with the National Democratic Congress and the New National Party with the supervisor of elections. And the supervisor of elections admitted to disregarding, neglecting the constitutional law as granted in Section 55 and 66 as it relates to the Boundaries Commission, a constitutional body, placing a boundary in the Mount Rush area. Now, only 2 political parties were brought into that meeting with something that affects the Grenadian people and the electorate. And not only the electorate, but the candidates such as myself, Mr. George, Ms. Rapier, the gentleman from the Renaissance Party, Dr. Washington, and other persons who would pay the same amount of money to get that chance to represent the people of Grenada. We do not pay less than the NDC candidates or the NNP candidates, and we do it knowing that the chances might be low of representing our people, but we do it in the interest of our people to give the average citizen the aspiration and the ambition to say, look, I could be that person that makes the change. Now, with that being said, Mr. Bubb, would be neglected as a candidate to public information, as a candidate, I also want to speak of the ills that the parliamentary election office has allowed to happen in the election, not only the previous one, but this upcoming one. So it is a great challenge for the candidates. Some people might say They're not seeing Ms. Rapier. They're not seeing Mr. George. They're not seeing Mr. Maitland. But we are at a constant battle with corruption in Grenada. Now, Mr. Rollo, Citizen Rollo, would have called in on a program just recently, on a local program, and he spoke as his right to vote, to have secret ballot, a constitutional right. And in response, the gentleman representing the parliamentary office said that the RPA allows someone to accompany a visually impaired person to cast a vote. Now, this in itself, Mr. Bubb, is unconstitutional. And just the fact that persons from the elections office knowingly confirm that they are breaking constitutional law. As we do know in the Constitution, it is the supreme law of the land, and any law that contradicts the Constitution is illegal. Knowingly saying to the people of Grenada that they are allowing this to happen. So some person who accompanies Mr. Rollo or any visually impaired person is seeing who Mr. Rollo is voting for. So that takes away from his constitutional right to secret ballot. Now, also, I would like to say to my constituents, there was one polling station in the Northeast St. George where persons were confirmed by the then supervisor of election, Mr. Alex Phillip, to vote illegally, 32 out of 35 names. Now, instead of putting the relevant law into place, the then supervisor of elections said that we are not going to investigate other polling stations to see if this acts of treason happened in other polling stations. We're going to leave it like that. Now, there is also the chances, seeing that nothing has happened, even with the ascension into that public office by Mr. Elvis Moraine, there are persons who are no longer among the living, whose names are on the
Well,
list.
the list is currently being consolidated, Mr. Maitland, as because you know that the registration period ended last week. But that list, by law, has to be consolidated before the election, and that is currently in process. So for you to then say that it's now a list that's not accurate, I think you are putting the cart before the horse there. But please,
well, I would say, Mr. Bubb, you know, there is a gentleman from Cafe St. Andrew who went to the maker since 2016. We had an election in 2018. That list was not sanitized. Now, how confident should I be in a gentleman who has admittedly, openly broken constitutional law to sanitize that list? This gentleman died in 2016. There's a next gentleman from the same area who died 10 years ago in 2012, and his name is still on the list. Now, the supervisor of elections, instead of sanitizing the list and you know, getting busy, earning that taxpayer dollar, he has said that they are dependent on objections from the public. Now, according to the law, the Constitution, the supervisor of election and his office are to receive or to ask for a quarterly report from deaths and births. And that in itself, Mr. Bubb, would give the confidence that something is happening. I would not be here today saying that a gentleman whose name should have been off the list since 2016 is still on the list today. We are, Mr. Bubb, we are only 4 weeks away from the election. We are only 4 weeks away. And I would love to see...
Mr. Maitland, we are almost out of time. We really are out of time. I know that is something you are very passionate about, but certainly we will be watching that space with respect to seeing what the final consolidated list would look like. Ms. Rapier, I want to give an opportunity for some closing comments. What constituency are you going to be contesting in? It appears that you're very undecided on this. Is it going to be St. George Southeast? Is it going to be St. George's South?
It's going to be one of the two. And we are not rushing in power because the Prime Minister rang a bell that he doesn't even have a bell to it.
Well, it's not even about the bell. It's about nomination and registration.
Yeah, I understand that, but we decide, and we decide when. We know when the deadline is, and we will submit based on the deadline, and we will announce. Because we do believe in going through a thorough review to ensure that the best candidate with the strongest chance is placed in that constituent. So it's either going to be the South or Southeast, and we do have a plan for what we can do there. And I can give you one of that if you'd like, or I can give you closing remarks. You decide.
Closing remarks. When you decide, here is the carrot and the stick approach here. When you decide what constituency you contest in, then you will be able to give us an update with respect to that constituency and your plans for that constituency.
Exactly.
So closing remarks, please.
Right. Closing remarks. A lot was said today. And I know for the sake of time, you've had to sort of move us along. But it's important that listeners do not by any chance assume that that means it's irrelevant. What Mr. Maitland is talking about with the elections and the lack of credibility with the supervisor of elections and this whole process of calling the election, it is important that we review it. Because in every society where human right has been protected, the right to vote is an indicator that we have our rights. Whether it's taken in violence, or whether it's taken subtlety and seduction, as it is in our case in Grenada, it's important for us to be educated about our Constitution and that we defend those rights. Our Constitution does need reform, and we do have some wonderful ideas on how the Grenadian people can reform it. The Grenadian people will make the decision, they will vote for those reforms, and it'll benefit them. But do not give away your human rights. And the right to vote is an indicator of every other right that you'll be able to enjoy as a Grenadian. So I stand with Earl and I stand with Mr. Dennison. We want the same thing for Grenada. We intend to get it, and we trust the Grenadian people at this election to make an educated decision for your personal, almost a selfish decision, for your personal power, for your personal growth, for your personal sustainability, for your personal health care, for your well-being, and for those that follow. And Power is here to deliver that. Earl Maitland is here to deliver that. Mr. Dennison is here to deliver that. And we can't trust the other two political parties who have left it undone for the last 30 years.
All right. Ms. Rapier, thank you so much for closing comments. And let me thank the rest of the panel, Mr. Dennison, Forrester George, and Mr. Earl Maitland, as well as earlier we had Ambassador Ali Gill. You, lady and gentlemen, provided very good content here on the Bubb Report today, and we thank you for your appearance, and may the best candidate win in this upcoming election. At the end of the day, democracy wins whenever we have successful electoral processes. So thank you all for your participation, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, viewers and listeners, that was the third-party candidate panel here on the Bubb Report this week. Certainly, we will endeavor to continue to have these conversations with candidates, with interested parties, as we go into another election, June 23rd in Grenada. On behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report, I am your host and humble servant, Dr. Kellen Bubb. Thank you for viewing. Have a safe week, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.